Good morning and welcome back to another We Are Sunderland morning briefing. It's myself, Matty Hewitt. I've got a special guest on this morning, but before I do the introductions, we are obviously in partnership with the Farm Museum and Cost Specs Opticians. We still have that competition running over on We Are Sunderland where you can win a pair of Black Cats Bar season tickets for next season. So again, mega prize. You can head over there. It's just £1 to subscribe for 6 months and it's £2.99 after that. So this morning I'm joined by Dom Howson, who is editor over at the Reaches Northeastern Yorkshire titles, the man in the know for Sheffield Wednesday. Thanks for joining me, Dom. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, I think looking forward to the end of the season, but I think there could possibly be a bit of drama on that last day.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into Dann Rohl later on, but I think it's probably best to try and make sense from a Sunderland point of view, to try and make sense of Sheffield Wednesday's season as a whole. And I think you've got to go back to the very start, haven't you? Winning promotion, and that summer that was just chaotic from the outside looking in.
Oh yeah, no, that's chaotic is absolutely the right word to describe it. After Wembley, you're thinking that Sheffield Wednesday are a club on the up and that they're going in the right direction. Dann Rohl had achieved his brief of getting them promoted at the second time of asking, and they did it in incredible fashion with the miracle of Hillsborough and the comeback against Peterborough and then winning at Wembley at Barnsley. And that really should have been the point of where, going into this season, you were thinking that, yeah, Sheffield Wednesday had momentum on the side, and that there was a lot of positivity around Hillsborough 12 months ago, and then they made the decision to part ways with Dann Rohl, and they were pretty much on the back foot straight away from that moment onwards. They were just chasing their tail and appointing Xisco Muniz. And one of his matches was the last time that they played Sunderland, and that was so one-sided, it was ridiculous, and that was a forgettable reign. And really, after 10 matches, when they had a couple of points on the board, I think everybody had written Sheffield Wednesday off and just thought they're going to go down. They're going to get relegated. They haven't got the quality, and the recruitment was so poor last summer that they left themselves in such a difficult predicament. And then we'll come on to what's gone on since then, which has been nothing short of incredible.
Yeah. I mean, in my previous role, I obviously did the odd bits and bobs covering Sheffield Wednesday, and I think at the time it always felt a bit harsh, the Darren Moore sacking. He'd been at clubs in and around the Championship, and it felt like, he deserved his opportunity at, back in the second tier. I'm just keen to pick your brains on obviously everything that transpired, and if you wouldn't mind explaining it a little bit for Sunderland fans who perhaps aren't in the know.
I think it was more really to do with the dispute over the direction of the club, and there were claims on Darren Moore's side, and then the owners, Dapon Chansiri, of over contracts, and that's what it was really. That was what the sort of the parting the ways was about. That they didn't see eye to eye on the way the club should be moving forward, and so it was a fairly amicable split. But you can imagine that the reaction from the fan base after that, that Darren Moore had got them over the line, and I think most people would have thought that if Dann Rohl had stayed, that he'd stabilised the club.
Yeah.
And I think that they looked at it and went that, Wednesday, I think they would have still been in the bottom half. But I think that Darren Moore worked so closely with that group of players, and then with how well he's held in such high esteem, when he's got great contacts in Premier League and youth level, particularly, that he could have attracted some really good players on loan from Premier League clubs that I think would have done well for Wednesday. And it wasn't to be. And Wednesday then had to react very quickly. I think that was the thing, Matty, of where you forget that by going into the playoffs, that then straight away that eats into your forward planning for the following year. That's an extra 3 weeks of where you don't know what division you're going to be in, and then that massively affects your recruitment of players. Because you've gone from looking at potentially League One players to you need Championship quality. So Wednesday were on the back foot from the moment that Dann Rohl left the football club, and then they hired the wrong person. On the face of it, you looked at it, and Cisco Muniz promotion on his CV with Watford, but he was dealing with a completely different caliber of players from when he had the best front three at Watford that ripped up the Championship to then coming to Sheffield Wednesday, a newly promoted club.
I mean, I think I saw one of your tweets not too long ago, from a couple of days ago, where it was the day of his departure. I think Sheffield Wednesday were bottom with 2 points. And again, I think I was covering Sheffield Wednesday in my previous role when Dann Rohl was appointed. And it felt like at the time that it was one of those appointments where, again, it was, I don't know, it was just from my outside opinion looking in. It felt like a gamble because he hadn't managed at any other club prior. He obviously had really good coaching pedigree, having been at the likes of Southampton, etc. But I don't think anybody could have envisioned, the run that Sheffield Wednesday have gone on since he came through the door. I mean, it's crazy. I think it was 2 points, was it, when Munoz was sacked? And you look at it, and the run that they've gone on since then has been incredible. But what were your sort of perceptions of him when he was first appointed?
I was similar to you. I thought it was very risky to bring in a rookie manager. And okay, he'd been as part of the backroom team at Southampton, and you do look at his pedigree. It's nuts, really, that he's at Sheffield Wednesday. You would look at it, and you think he's worked for the German national team, and he's worked at Bayern Munich. What is he doing at Sheffield Wednesday? I think that's what I think some people looking at it, and so I was one of those that was skeptical originally, but then when you look at the man's CV. And you're thinking that if he then surrounds himself with the right technical team and that they get the recruitment right in January, that they might have half a chance. But I still don't think anyone thought that they'd then be able, with Dann Rohl coming in, because effectively they were handicapped. It's like starting the season with a points deduction, 2 points from 10. So to then take from the following 35 matches, 48 points, and I think they'd be somewhere like 8th or 9th in the table. Since Dann Rohl's come in, you're talking in like this calendar year, it's like promotion form. It really is. 8 wins from the last 15. It's astonishing. But I think bringing in someone like Chris Powell, again, somebody really well connected in the game, who's coached with England, managed loads of clubs. I think he needed that. Somebody who has got a foot in both camps and is somebody that's really well respected. And I think that definitely helped too. And it's just been a collective effort. It really has. And when you consider that in January he only signed 4 loan players. Right, and they weren't guys that were ripping it up elsewhere. They weren't, like Jan Poveda wasn't getting a game for Leeds. You've got James Beadle, who he was doing well, but at a lower level in Oxford, and he's coming on loan from Brighton. So they've just got so many things right that's then led to this point of where I expect them to get a result at Sunderland and to guarantee safety.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was an interesting stat. I don't know how accurate it is, but I think it was if the season had started when Dann Rohl had come in, I think Sheffield Wednesday would have been 6 points outside the playoffs or something like that. And Sunderland's season, they would have been 19th. So it's the two clubs have gone in sort of completely different trajectories. Not long after, obviously, Tony Mowbray's departure, the wheels sort of fell off. It's interesting that you mentioned Chris Powell there, because I was going to ask you about that, about how important he's been, because again, just from the outside looking in, you've got this unknown German head coach comes in. For him to have that, somebody like Chris Powell, a senior figure, someone who's well respected in the coaching setup across English football, alongside him, you're thinking, oh, well, that's a bit of a strange one. Like, how did that come about? I don't know, obviously, if you know the ins and outs of how that did happen, but that is a real good piece of business as well, isn't it, to bring somebody like that in with them?
I'm led to believe that the owner, Chansiri, I think he was really keen for them to have a British coach as part
Yeah,
of the setup. And it's not unheard of or uncommon
yeah,
for Wednesday to have that in the sort of 9+ years of Chansiri's premiership. It was the same when they had Carlos Carvalho. He had Lee Bullen, who is
hmm,
a bit of a sort of cult hero among Wednesday fans, part of his backroom team. And so, yeah, from what I've been told, I think Chansiri was really keen to have that British presence there and felt it was vital that they did, with the predicament that Wednesday are in. And Chris Powell was available. And I think he knew Danny Rohl a little bit, but I wouldn't say
hmm,
that they were massively close.
yeah,
But Danny Rohl, I mean, this is what is exciting for Wednesday if they stay up in the future.
yeah,
It is the fact that this guy has got a serious contact book that he'd be able to open up doors you would like to think that Sheffield Wednesday haven't really been able to
hmm,
barge through and get through for years. So, yeah, just everything has come together very nicely for Wednesday. And it's now going to take a lot for them to get relegated. And,
yeah.
and they're in decent form, back-to-back wins. They produced their best, arguably two of their best performances have come in the last two matches. And so that's why they should go to Sunderland with a lot of confidence.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of history between these two clubs as well, isn't there, from previous years. Before we get into the past previous meetings, I found it interesting just when I was obviously doing a little bit of background stuff just on Danny Rohl that Chris Powell actually came out and urged people to be patient with Rohl after that 1-0 defeat in his first game. I think it was at Watford. His first home game was a 2-0 victory over Rotherham. And I mean, I think everybody sort of expected Rotherham to struggle. But then that run of form over December, I think, was 4 wins from 7. You're suddenly starting to think, from the outside looking in anyway, Sheffield Wed, as you said, they didn't have a chance. I don't think many people gave them a chance until that sort of run of form. I think people started to sit up and take notice then.
What's really sort of staggering is that Wednesday have had a few beatings
Mm,
under Danny Rohl. It's not sort of been plain sailing. They got spanked at Southampton.
yeah.
They lost heavily at home to Millwall. And then I think most people, again, early February, they got hammered by Huddersfield 4-0.
Mm,
And so the doubts were starting to creep in, I think, amongst the fan base. And at that stage, after they lost to Huddersfield, they were 8 points adrift. So
mhm.
it just shows you how quickly things can change in football. And really, I think I've got to underline this. Danny Rohl has got a connection with the fan base at Sheffield
Yeah.
Wednesday like I haven't seen at Wednesday since the Carvalho era. And to be
Mhm.
honest, I think it's even stronger than that. I think it's probably the fans have just bought into everything that Danny Rohl has done. And I go as far back as like Big Ron, when Big Ron was at
Mm.
Hillsborough.
Yeah.
And so you're going back 20+ years. Right? They adore him. They sing his song. You're going to hear plenty of that on Saturday.
Mm.
Right? They just love him, and that's why the toughest thing for Wednesday in the big picture, because they could get relegated this weekend,
Yeah.
but irrespective of what happens on Saturday, Danny Rohl's stock is so high, and the
Mhm.
biggest challenge that Sheffield Wednesday are going to have is keeping hold of him.
Yeah.
Because he gave them hope when they didn't have any. That's
Mm.
he has galvanized the entire football club, and the fans couldn't be more behind them. And it was a fractured football club.
Yeah.
When he took over, the day of when Sunderland came to Hillsborough and thrashed them, you had a statement that was released in the earlier on that day by Chansiri that caused more division. And so what he's done is remarkable to just repair the sort of the connection between the fans and
It,
the team and the football club.
it's remarkable, isn't it, that head coaches do that? Because I think in the modern game, you'd struggle to find managers who do such a good job at knitting everything together, such as the nature of, you've got sporting directors, etc. There's so many facets of a football club nowadays that you have to all. Sunderland use the word alignment and talking about that, and that's something that they've struggled to get. But from speaking to you there, it certainly sounds like Danny Rohl's done that at Sheffield Wednesday, and it was a fractured club when he went in. I imagine there's still sort of things ongoing behind the scenes with Chancery, of course, but you mentioned his stock being so high there, and Sunderland are actually one of the clubs who've been repeatedly linked with Danny Rohl, because obviously Sunderland are looking for a new manager. From a Sunderland point of view, I mean, they'll be hoping that Sheffield Wednesday do go down in the potential, that they could lure Danny Rohl there. I mean, the likelihood
this is me selling Danny Rohl to Sunderland, but if I'm Sunderland and the powers that be at the Stadium of Light, you'd be silly not to be looking at somebody like Danny Rohl if he fits in with the long-term strategy and structure. And the problem Wednesday have got is that for years they haven't had a plan.
Yeah.
And so this is where they're going to have talks at the end of the season. That is Danny Rohl and Chancery to thrash things out. And Danny Rohl has made it pretty clear that he thinks they've got to improve the facilities. And there's loads of areas of Sheffield Wednesday that need addressing behind the scenes to create an environment where they then could be challenging at the top end of the Championship next season if they stay up. And if Danny Rohl doesn't get what Danny Rohl wants, he's not going to hang around. I don't see. He's an ambitious man, and so if Sheffield Wednesday don't back him this summer, then I can see him going elsewhere. And that I hope he doesn't. I really think that for the first time in years, I'm looking at a Sheffield Wednesday manager who could build something sustainable and for the long term. But if somebody else comes in and says, we'll give you way more resources to achieve what you want to achieve, I think he's going to find that pretty enticing. And so, the ball is firmly in Chancery's court. It's all down to him to persuade Danny Rohl to stay, and that he's at the right football club to achieve what he wants to achieve in his career.
Because a lot of that conversation in the summer that you mentioned, when it was a fractured fan base, I think Chancery came out and said that he wasn't going to put something along the lines of, he wasn't going to put any more money in terms of more than what he already is. So has that sort of situation resolved itself, do you think? Do you think with Danny Rohl, obviously how well he's performed on the pitch, do you think that Chancery is sort of left with
the results on the pitch? I still feel as if are papering over the cracks, and the relationship between Chancery and the fan base is broken, and really it's going to take a lot of decisions, correct decisions, for that to change. And so in appointing Danny Rohl, he deserves an enormous credit, because he had people like myself in the media and other people questioning the decision. And if Sheffield Wednesday stay up, he's been proven right, and he's got this spot on. But do I have faith in Chancery that he's going to back Danny Rohl for the long term based on past history? I've got serious doubts about that. And that's where, as I said to you before, there's an opening for other clubs, potentially Sunderland, of, if they were to approach or wanted to chat to Danny Rohl. And we don't know the contract situation as well with Danny Rohl either. We don't know. It never gets divulged with managers. It's one of the sort of club's policies of where when they appoint a manager, they never say what the length of the contract is. And so really the situation is that there will be a discussion between Chancery and Rohl at the end of the season. And so, it goes back to what I said before of Rohl's got to like what Chancery's got to offer him. Otherwise, it wouldn't shock me if he's not there next season, and that would be a crying shame for Wednesday.
I mean, that's a really interesting point in terms of his contractual situation, because again, Sunderland previously, just under this ownership, the appointments that they've made have tended to be managers who are out of contract, or they were linked with Will Still, but there was talk of obviously his buyout clause being more than what they were willing to pay for. So again, I do think Sunderland will obviously make a quick managerial decision come the end of the season. But the Danny Rohl situation, as you say, there is interesting. In terms of what...
Sorry, I was just going to add on that, was with Rohl, that if Rohl has, say, another year on his contract, and sometimes Sheffield Wednesday have done rolling contracts with their manager, and sometimes it's been for maybe a couple of years, then that would be the sort of interesting dynamic of if a club were to approach Sheffield Wednesday. One thing I do know about Chansiri is that he will drive a hard bargain, and so he won't let that person go on the cheap. And that didn't happen. That's not happened with other managers before. It's Steve Bruce many years ago when he left in the summer to go to Newcastle. They got a serious compensation. It will all be about the terms of that contract and what the termination clause is, and who knows? I mean, we're just talking hypothetically here, but there is a scenario, as I say, where there's no guarantee that Danny Rohl will definitely be at Sheffield Wednesday next season, regardless of what division they're in.
I know you've spoken about knitting the club together in terms of off the pitch, getting fans on side. What's it been like on the pitch in terms of style of play? Because when instantly you think of a German head coach or coach, I think everybody sort of falls into the trap of, Jurgen Klopp, high pressing, high octane. What is his style of play?
That is his preferred style of play, high pressing. But I think he has realised that he hasn't quite got the players to execute his game plan and to play the way he likes. And there have been times where they've tried to play out from the back and they just don't have the ball playing defenders capable of doing it right now on the books. And that will be something that he would look to address in the summer. I've got no doubt about that. And the goalkeeper is a really important part of the way Danny Rohl likes to set his team up to try and invite the opponents onto them and then to play through. But they've actually, in the last few weeks, what they've done is they've tried to simplify things because they had a really poor performance at Middlesbrough, where Danny Rohl was pretty scathing of the performance, and you were again thinking at that point maybe there's no coming back here for Wednesday. But every time they've had adversity, that's what they've done. They've always then managed to quickly bounce back and get a result. The playing style, he really has mixed things up the last few months, and he's not been afraid to go more direct. They've got Michael Smith and Ike Ugbo in attack, and they've only recently had Josh Windass that's come back from injury, and again he's hit a bit of form. They're able to mix the game up like that, and they're not afraid to just the pace out wide is what they've got in people like Anthony Musaba, who's had a pretty good first year in English football. They've got Gassama, who can play on the left. Paveda was really good up until he got injured. So they've got players that enable them to get up the pitch quickly and where they can hit you on the counter attack, and so that's where they've got that variety, and they still don't score enough goals. They're still one of the lowest scoring teams in the division, but they have improved in that department since Rohl's come in.
Yeah. So have they tended to operate with a back three? Because obviously when I've just looked at things, or a back five, I notice, because I've been keeping a faint eye on things with, obviously, because of the Marvin Johnson situation, he was out of the picture, wasn't he, in the summer, and all of a sudden he's back in again. How have they sort of set up?
Yeah, no, again, it's changed from week to week. I would say that they look more comfortable in a back three, and that's what they'll probably play on Saturday lunchtime. They have gone with a back four. But as I say, they've got centre-backs on their books who they've got mistakes in them. Bambo Diaby was really poor in the first half of the season, but has been better in the last few months. Michael Hekwer didn't really feature much at all under Xisco Munoz, and he's come back into it more since Danny Rohl took over. Dominic Iorf has been in and out of the team. He's had his injury problems. But I think with the players that they've got, and you mentioned Martin Johnson, he's tailor-made as a left wing back. And they've got people like Liam Palmer, who is a really good utility player, and has
Yeah.
been a great servant for the club. And he can fill in at right centre back, also right wing back. He's played in central midfield, so that's where with their formation is fluid. And Danny Rohl, sometimes he's thrown the odd curveball in when they played a back four. Deshaun Bernard is a centre back by trade. He tried playing him in a defensive midfield role when they got steamrolled at Southampton and lost 4-0. And he's not tried that experiment again since then. But there's been other instances of where, they like to keep the opposition guessing with the formation. That comes from the top as well. Many chats with Chansiri, he loves that. Them being unpredictable and for teams not to necessarily be able to guess from game to game how they're going to play.
I mean, if I just quickly go through some of the results, I mean, last time out 3-0 against Sheffield West Brom, 3-1 win over Blackburn, a draw with Stoke, a draw with Norwich, which at the time, obviously, they're up there top end, 2-0 win over QPR away from home, and then there's that Borough game. I mean, that's some run of form as well to exactly when they need it.
Yeah, and I was at the Stoke home match, and I came away thinking that, excuse me, they'd blown it, and they went ahead, and then they conceded another poor, soft goal and ended up with a draw. And you come away from Hillsborough thinking that they've lost the momentum and they're going to need a really strong finish. Are they capable of it? But they had a couple of results that, where everything went their way before they played Blackburn the following week, with Huddersfield slipping up and Birmingham and other teams down there drop points, and it opened the door for Wednesday. And then Blackburn have struggled since John Eustace has gone there, so it wasn't a bad fixture for them, but they still went and they did a really good job and they played well. And they got the win, and then Hillsborough was bouncing for West Brom. Again, timing-wise, you're looking at it, West Brom aren't in the best of form, but you still have to go and do the business, and 30,000 plus turned up last week, and Wednesday knew they had to win, to keep their fate in their own hands, and that's what they did. And so, there've been a number of impressive performances from Wednesday, and that's it. They've shown greater consistency than a lot of teams down there at the bottom, and that's why they've put themselves in such a strong position going into the final weekend.
Yeah, just last couple, and we'll round things up. If you have been watching over on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. Obviously, there's been a lot riding on, the last couple of meetings between Sunderland and Sheffield Wednesday. I mean, you think back to that night at Hillsborough where Patrick Roberts has scored. I mean, the memorable occasions, and again, it's another one where there's a lot riding on it, not from a Sunderland point of view, but certainly from an Owls point of view. With just a point needed, I'm intrigued because from what, obviously, listening to you there, I certainly don't think that Danny Rohl's side will set up looking for a point.
They can't afford to. If they go with that mindset and results elsewhere go against them, Birmingham and Plymouth, they're bang in trouble. And they've worked so hard to put themselves in this position. I don't see them throwing it away. And you're totally right. It's not in Danny Rohl's nature to park the bus. He's not going to. And they will go with an attack-minded mindset. And they're going to go with lots of confidence and belief as well. Complete opposite to Sunderland. When you look in the form table and how the direction of travel that the two teams are going. If Wednesday win, what was it? I think they finished only 3 points behind Sunderland, and you're talking, that's staggering from the position that they were in at October, Christmas time, and so Wednesday, they want to finish the season strongly to take into next year, and they'll be thinking that they've got maybe a nucleus of players that can then see them in the Championship, fighting in that top 10 and looking to really push on. That's what they'll be aiming for. But I think that, Wednesday, I don't expect them to make many changes from last weekend. It's impossible not to, when you've kept a clean sheet, scored 3 goals and you've beaten the team in the top 6. I think that Danny Rohl will be saying to them, and the message will be, go again, boys. One last push. This is it.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's obviously we've spoken quite a bit hypothetically, but just say for this weekend, if they do, get the points needed that they need to stay up, what do you think is a realistic sort of expectation for Sheffield Wednesday next season? Because again, they're a massive club, and like Sunderland, they probably spend far too long in League One. What do you think is realistic if obviously they keep Dann Rohl?
It's all about keeping Dann Rohl, as we've discussed. Assuming they keep Dann Rohl, I think that they can set the sights very high, and they should be looking at minimum top half, and potentially knocking on the doors of the playoffs. But they'd have to get their recruitment right.
Yeah,
and
of course.
And we're talking about Chansiri needing to back the manager, and so we've seen in the last couple of years that he hasn't invested heavily, in the team. Certainly, they haven't spent masses of money on player transfers, and the wage bill was big, was cut massively after they got relegated to League One.
Yeah.
So I feel as if that they've got loads of decisions to make on out of contract players. They've got 18 players up this summer. So it's an opportunity for a manager for a big rebuild, huge overhaul. And so Dann Rohl is going to get a great chance to put his stamp on the club from top to bottom, and he has to be given everything he wants. He deserves it after the job he's done.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks for joining me, Dom. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Again, if you're watching over on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. And again, We Are Sunderland in partnership with the Farm Museum and Cospex Opticians. Just £1 to subscribe for 6 months as part of our launch offer. And if you do so, you can win a pair of season tickets in the Black Cats bar for next season. Thanks again for joining me. We'll be back later in the week after talking to Mike Dodds ahead of his press conference ahead of Sunderland versus Sheffield Wednesday. Thanks again, Dom.